So today we are going to be building my Championship Ultimate Team, but we're going to have to follow these 3 rules. So rule number 1, we must have a starting 11 as well as a manager. Rule number 2, you can only use a club once, so as soon as we've used someone from Fulham, for example, we can't use any other players or managers from Fulham. And rule number 3, this is where it gets quite tricky, you can only use a nation once. So as soon as I've picked someone from England, no other English players will be able to make it into the team. Honestly, as soon as you start doing it, it does get quite tricky quite soon on, especially with that nations rule. I want to get your guys' 11s in the comments down below. This was my attempt though, so if you do go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Without any further ado though, let's jump into this one. So starting out in goal from Denmark and Preston, I have gone for Daniel Everson. There were a few choices I had to go for in net, but a lot of the other choices that I wanted to go for, I've either picked a player further on up the field from that club, or I've picked a nation that also relates to that goalkeeper. Daniel Everson's absolutely brilliant though. I think that Preston have been really fortunate to have him for the past season and a half, and I think that we'd be really lucky to get him back on a loan deal for next season. Don't get me wrong, he still has his inconsistencies to his game. You know, his distribution can be a little bit hit or miss, and sometimes you know, he'll still have a mistake here or there, but if we're talking about a save compilation at the end of the season, Daniel Everson is going to be right up there because he has pulled off some absolutely mind-bending saves throughout the year. The 2 games we've had against Bournemouth this season especially come to mind when I think of Iverson and some of the just ridiculous saves he's pulled out the bag. But he saved us multiple points throughout the season, and I think he starts out this team quite strongly. Coming in at right back from Middlesbrough and England, I have gone for Isaiah Jones, so no other English players are going to make it into my team. I've decided to use that on the right back spot. Now there are obviously a couple of brilliant English right backs in the Championship, but someone else from Nottingham Forest might have made it into my team, which made this choice a little bit easier. But Jones has been absolutely fantastic this season. I know he's played as a wing back throughout the season, and I've got him as a little bit more of a traditional fullback in my team, but nevertheless, it's been a real breakthrough year for him. I'm sure there'll be plenty of interest in Jones come the summer with the year he's had. And I think he's got such a high ceiling as well, which is why he's been such an exciting player this season. In as my first centre half from Nottingham Forest and from Scotland, I have gone for Scott Mckenna. Really consistent centre half, as when he's in that Forest back line, there's no doubting that they are a better side with him in it. A good pick-up when they managed to get that deal done, to be honest, because there were a few Championship clubs, if I remember rightly, that were sniffing around Scott Mckenna. But Nottingham Forest are quite well stocked in that department, and I think that coming in as a Scotsman and from Nottingham Forest, he does this team no harm. I think our backline's already looking pretty strong. And partnering him at the back, we're going to have West Brom and Nigeria's Semi Ajayi. I've always quite liked Semi Ajayi, to be honest, ever since his Rotherham days when he was really good. West Brom picked him up after that, and he's had a little bit of a turbulent season, to be honest, because under Valérien Ismaël for the first portion of the season, he didn't really get all too much of a look in. He was on the bench for the majority of Ismaël's time there, and since Steve Bruce has come in at West Brom, we've sort of been reminded of what Ajayi can actually do at this level. I know he's not been quite as prolific in front of goal, but still offers that goal threat moving forward. Also fairly versatile as well, can play at the back or further forward into midfield. Towering defender, not much is going to get past my centre-half pairing, I don't think. And then on the left-hand side, I'm going to go for Swansea City and Ireland's Ryan Manning. To be honest, he's played more as a centre-half this season, hasn't he, as Swansea have transitioned into playing with the back 3, and Ryan Manning's actually done really well to sort of adapt his game playing as that left-sided centre-half. But throughout his career, Ryan Manning has been, you know, accustomed to playing at full-back and has been fairly versatile throughout his career, to be honest. You know, could easily slot into midfield as well, but always quite like Ryan Manning, to be honest. I think he's quite solid in this new Swansea setup as well. I think he's been fairly well suited to it, actually. Always good to pop up with an assist, and does have a little bit of a goal threat about him as well. I've gone for 3 in the middle, and as my first entry, I've gone for Bournemouth and Colombia midfielder Jefferson Lerma. We need someone in there who's going to be able to break up play, do the nasty bit of the game as well, and Jefferson Lerma is that down to a T, isn't he? He's a horrible player to play against, let's be honest. He's not quite got there yet, but every other season he's had in England for Bournemouth so far, he's easily managed to get into double figures in terms of yellow cards. With Levante in the 17/18 season, amazingly so, he picked up 16 yellow cards in the league. Lerma is absolute quality though. He's one of those players that if Bournemouth are promoted back up to the Premier League, he'll have no problems adapting to that level once again. Speaking of yellow cards, next to him we're going to go for Gustavo Hamer of both Coventry and the Netherlands. He is thus far the most booked player in the Championship, so I mean this team's certainly going to rack up the suspensions, that's fair to say, but Gustavo Hamer is absolute quality. Long range passes, spreading the ball, has a goal in him, an eye for a pass as well, 6 assists this season. Coventry's recruitment team, since they've been back up in the Championship, for the most part has been pretty bang on, but with Gustavo Hamer especially, they uncovered some gem to say the least. And to finish off my midfield three, we're going to go for Sander Berge of Sheffield United and Norway. Since coming to Sheffield United, he has been pretty unfortunate with injuries, to be honest. He missed a large chunk of that Premier League season and this season as well. I think he missed about 12 games earlier on in the year with that hamstring injury. And so for me, there was always a little bit of a feeling of frustration with Berge because it's always felt like he could go on to that next level, but consistency couldn't quite be added to his game because of those injuries. But second half of this season, I think he's really showed his class in the Championship. The goals have been coming as well. And he is another really classy operator who, if Sheffield United are to be promoted, won't have any troubles adapting to the Premier League once again. Speaking of injuries, boy have Blackburn missed this guy. We're going to go for the Chilean sensation of Ben Brereton Diaz. Of course he was always going to make it into this team based on this season. He's very much taken up the mantle of the main focal point in this Rovers side that was sort of there for the taking after the departure of Adam Armstrong in the summer. It was no surprise that Blackburn's tail off in form coincided with Brereton picking up that injury. But already hitting the 20 goal mark for this point of the season is absolutely fantastic. He's been fairly versatile. He's played pretty much everywhere across that forward line, either on the left, sometimes on the right, or through the middle. Absolutely lethal with his pace and how he can get in behind, and perfectly suited to this Blackburn setup. And I'm very interested to see what the future holds for him. I think Blackburn have got that 1-year extension clause on his contract, but after that, it does feel like a Premier League move is on the horizon for him for sure. In off the right hand side, we're going to go for Bristol City and Austria's Andy Veymon. Potentially one of the most underrated players in the Championship because, I mean, he's in the conversation for one of the best forwards this season. He's closing in on 20 goals, and not just that, but double figures for both goals and assists. Veymon is absolute quality, and I dread to think just where Bristol City might be this season had they not had Andy Veymon in the setup. He's unbelievably versatile in the positions he's played this season. He's played pretty much everywhere apart from in net. And for a lot of the times that he's scoring as well, he very rarely seems to just score one goal in the game. It's always a brace or a hat-trick or something, isn't it, with Veymon? But to finish off the starting 11, of course we're going to go for Fulham and Serbia's Aleksandar Mitrovic. The guy's been breaking records this season, and I dread to think what would happen if, you know, God forbid Fulham end up being relegated again and he sticks it out with Fulham in the Championship once again, what sort of numbers he'll continue to put up. He's got the best goals to minute ratio in Championship history. Very rarely has a defender got the better of him this season. We're talking about, you know, maybe a handful of defenders and that's it at max. I do think there is a little bit of a misconception around Mitrovic that he, you know, can't do it in the Premier League or anything like that. You know, previously he has hit double figures for a Fulham side who ended up getting relegated. Last time in the Premier League, okay, it wasn't his best season, but Scott Parker didn't fancy him for half the season, did he? In a proper setup with an attacking-minded manager like Marco Silva, I fancy Mitrovic to be alright in the Premier League next year, I really do. But every good team needs a manager, and I've intentionally not picked anyone from either Luton Town or that is Welsh. So coming in as my manager, we're of course going to go for Nathan Jones. In the running for manager of the season right now, if he does manage to deliver a top 6 finish for Luton at the end of the season. The trajectory that Luton as a club have been on over the last, 5 or so years has been absolutely amazing to see the climb, and this season they're really pushing the boundaries series of what was expected of them at the start of the season. You know, the teams they're brushing up against in the top half of the championship, with the way they've recruited players over the last couple of years, and with his passion, I think if you were a fan of Luton, you just couldn't help but love him, could you? I know he does, you know, wind up opposition fans and things like that, I get that, but as a manager, there's no taking away from how good he's been this season. But as you can see on screen there, those are my selections for my personal Championship Ultimate Team based on the rules that we set at the start of the video. I'd be interested to know, do any of you guys think that you can build a better team than I've just done there with the stipulations that were laid out at the start? Let me know down below. But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Very much enjoyed doing this one. If you would like to see more sort of creative sort of squad builder type things for the Championship, then do leave a like on today's video. I've got a few other ideas for what could work in this sort of series. But yeah, if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Do get your comments down below and stay subscribed for some regular Championship content. Apart from that, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.